Hi BookTube, it's been about a week since my last video I think, so I thought I'd check in with a Friday Reads style video. I finished one novel and I've started another. I finished The Walls of Eternity by Karl over Knausgaard just last night. I was quite harsh on this book in my last video. Uh, I think that's justified, this is a huge author. And me talking about this in the BookTube video isn't going to make the slightest bit of difference to his life or this book. And I do stand by what I said. I think it's a light book. It's airy and there's not a lot of depth. However, I will say that it is one of those rare instances of a book which seems to get better as it goes along. Or at least it doesn't depreciate in quality, which is quite something for a book of this length. So it's bordering on 800 pages. There are two main narratives in the book. So the first half, which is what I'd read up to in my last video, is about the young Norwegian man who's come back from his national service in the 80s. The other narrative, which makes up the sort of the bulk of the second half of the book, is about a single mother in modern day Russia, who is connected to this young man from the other narrative in a way which I won't say, because if someone wants to read this, they might consider it a spoiler. And I will say that this was written or originally published about a year before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, so that doesn't play a part in this book at all, although it was published in English about a year after that. The young and the single mother, say, is she's also either studying for a doctorate in the sciences or has one, can't quite remember. But she's doing lectures and things on natural history, and I for the most part really enjoyed that part of the story. And throughout the book is sprinkled sort of vignettes or just little stories of other characters, much shorter in length, who don't seem to be connected in any way except either geographically or maybe just have a thin relation to another character. And I, for the most part, enjoyed those. You might call them short stories as well. Particularly one involving a lorry driver in Russia, which was really good. As a standalone story, I really enjoyed that. But there is one thing which seems to unite all the characters, in that there's this weird weather phenomenon which happens later on in the book, in which a huge bright star appears in the sky in the middle of the day, and no one can explain what it is, why it's happened, and they just declare it a miracle, basically. And that did remind me that when I read the brief synopsis of the first book in this novel sequence or cycle, whatever it's called, so this is the second, it did mention that there was a similar thing, a similar weather event in which a bright star appears, and this united the characters. So I imagine that's what is going to be connecting this novel sequence. I don't know how many books there are going to be. I would imagine 4, but that is the main thing. So I stand by what I said. I think it's a light book, but I liked the way it came together. It's 800 pages. It kept my attention. It kept me reading, and there was enough in the book to enjoy. So I still would be inclined. I think I want to try the My Struggle book first, before going back to, say, the first novel in this sequence. And that hasn't changed. I still want to do that. So yeah. That being said, I was quite pleased to finish it because I wanted to read something else. I have to be careful about doing that these days, because if I start reading another novel before I finished the one I'm reading, chances are I'm probably not going to finish the one that I was already reading, so I have to be quite strict there. Um, but when I finished that, I immediately picked up this novel, Starfree by Lutz Seiler or Seiler. One of my German viewers can tell me how to pronounce that. A German author. So a bit of a backstory behind me getting this book. So I only actually bought it a few days ago. I've been in Leicestershire visiting old uni friends, and we did take a day trip to Nottingham. So about half an hour drive and then half an hour on the tram. And so I've got a tram system there into the city. And I think I don't think I'd ever been to Nottingham before. I have a vague recollection of maybe going there on a night out once, but I can't quite remember. So I'm calling this my first sort of official trip to Nottingham. And I have to say, the city uh, enchanted me. Whether it was just because it was happened to be such a beautiful day, weather-wise, or just because I was with good friends, but I really loved the architecture, the people, were very vibrant. Um, it was bigger than I anticipated. It felt more like a part of London than another city. So yeah, I really did like Nottingham, and I'm sure it has, its rough areas and its impoverished areas. It is an incredibly diverse city, and yeah, but I really liked it, and the food. Um, there was seemed to be a rich kind of gaming culture for like board games and tabletop gaming and that kind of stuff, which I quite like. But of course, one of the reasons we went, or one of the things we did, was to visit the bookshops. Now, there weren't that many. One of them was closed because it was a Sunday, so we didn't get to go in that one. There was a Waterstones, which we wouldn't have made a point of going to, but because all Waterstones are more or less the same, just in different locations. But because we passed it, we thought we may as well just nip in and have a look. I ended up buying like 3 books there in their remainder section for quite cheap, so that was worthwhile in the end. There was an Oxfam bookshop, which was thoroughly disappointing. I don't think I bought anything in there. Definitely one of the weaker Oxfam bookshops I've ever been to. But the highlight probably was, even though I only bought 1 book from there, was the a little independent shop called Five Leaves Bookshop, which is literally hidden behind or down this sort of narrow passageway. You'd have no idea there was a shop there. There was only because we were looking for it on Google Maps, and there was a little sign outside as well. But you would you would miss it quite easily. And you walk down this nice little passageway, and then suddenly there's this nice little shop inside. Um, and when we walked down the passageway, there was actually a man standing at the end of the passage, by the street as we walked past, and then he started to follow us in, and soon it became apparent that he was probably the owner of the shop, because then he went behind a till, and then he went to make himself a coffee in this sort of kitchen area in the back. Not very talkative man, but nice chap nonetheless. Um, it's not a big shop, but it was very well curated. So it had a decent poetry section, it had a decent fiction section, but the main focus of the shop was clearly on sort of politics, feminism, activism, local books or local literature, which I looked through all of that, but didn't end up buying any of it. And also, they seem to have their own press or publication, Five Leaves books or something like that, of I think local novels, that kind of thing. and there was clearly a lot of local author events happening as well, and sort of book clubs, that sort of thing. We were the only ones in there. We were in there for quite some time. Um, Looked through pretty much everything, and my friend didn't buy anything. I wasn't going to buy anything, but I thought it wasn't that I felt guilty about not buying anything. It's just that I felt I wanted to buy something, just to support the shop in some way. So I had picked out two novels. Had two novels in mind. There was an Italian book or translated book, and there was this, and I ended up going for this, obviously. Um, Star 3 by Lutz Seiler. Never heard of it. I think I may have picked it up in Toppings actually in my local bookshop, but didn't buy it. Um, and I was reading sort of the blurbs again, and I thought it sounded quite interesting. So it's a German novel in translation. Um, the first thing to say is it seems to be this seems to be a huge book in Germany, or in German. Won a prize, I think. The Leipzig Book Fair Prize is shortlisted for other prizes. Number one on the Spiegel bestseller list. And it sold 150,000 copies in German, which actually sets alarm bells for me, because I think, well, if a book sold that much, why? That's sort of a warning sign. It's probably something that I'm not going to like. Maybe a plot-driven book, something like that. But the weird thing is, the way it's been published and marketed, in the UK at least, is not like a book that's going to sell thousands of copies at all. You can see it's obviously a very minimalist design. It's published by And Other Stories, which is a great independent or small press, I guess they're called. At first glance, you wouldn't think this is a book that's going to sell thousands of copies, and I don't think it has, because, judging by the Amazon listings for this book, there have been 2-star reviews, as in 2 different reviews. And for the German one, there's like over 900. So, and this was published it says 2023. So, it's been out for at least 6 months, as far as I know. Maybe it's just because Europeans are more cultured than us. I don't know. But the other thing is, I looked and I saw that it looks like the New York Review of Books are publishing this in the US. But it's available for pre-order, so it's not quite out yet. Which is also weird, because this has a US price as well as a British pounds price. And I think And Other Stories have a branch in New York, so I imagine this is available in America. It's the same translation by Tess Lewis, so I don't know what the story is behind that. But anyway, the book, I've read about 70 pages, and I'll say it's excellent. It's just fantastic. It's set towards the end of 1989, just after the fall of the Berlin Wall, in East Germany. Again, follows a young man, although I think he's about 26, unless I misunderstood, called Karl. And his parents decide that they're going to flee to or move to West Germany without him, and they say, "We want you to stay behind and look after the house." And this raises lots of questions. It's a bit mysterious, and the son is asking the same questions, saying that, "Why have they gone without me? Usually it should be the other way around. They should have sent me off to a better life," sort of thing. So all that's a bit ambiguous at the moment, at least. Meanwhile, he's sort of stuck where he is. I can't remember exactly the name of the town or city he's in, but he quickly decides he's not going to stay there, and he's going to go to Berlin himself, where he meets up with a sort of group of, I don't know what you call them, drifters, misfits, a very odd group of people. And in many ways, the book is doing similar things to what Knausgaard in The Walls of Eternity is trying to do. Uh, it follows a young man. He's looking for meaning in life. He's looking for escape, for money. Um, but the difference is he does it a lot better. I mean, this book is much more controlled. He does it with a lot more intensity, and the writing is just better. You know, even in translation, you can tell. Very poetic in places, and I realise now that this author is also a poet. And that shows. I mean, I do like it when poets turn to prose, because it just shows an absolute mastery of language. So I'm just enjoying this a lot more than The Walls of Eternity. It reminds me of the kind of book that I like to read, compared to books like Walls of Eternity. So I'm really glad I got this, really glad I started reading it. For my German viewers out there, I know there's at least one of you, or German-speaking viewers. I'd love to know a bit more about the context of this book. You know, why is it such a big book there? You know, has it done as well as it says? And I'd like to know why it hasn't caused more of a splash internationally. You know, I can't see any sort of reviews in the print media here. Just doing a cursory search on Google, I can't really see any English language reviews. It's been out for some time. I don't know if it would have qualified for the last Booker International Prize. Maybe it'll qualify for the next one. I think, didn't they just award that prize? So you would have thought that this would have been on there. So there's no mention of it being longlisted or anything, which seems to be a shame, because it judging from what I've read so far, it does seem to be a really quite not just a good book, but an important book. So I don't know. I see that And Other Stories have also published, or are publishing, a collection of his non-fiction in exactly the same format. So it's sort of the white with the text on the front there, which I think I'll look into getting, because they're really nice books, and I really like this author so far. So yeah, let me know if you know anything about this book, if you've come across it, if you're interested in reading it. And I will. I haven't got much on for next. Got some time off work, and of course the weekend's coming up, so I'll probably be reading this. And by next week, I hope I will have finished it, and we'll be able to report back a bit more on the book as a whole. But yeah, that's 18 minutes for 2 books, so I think I'll leave it there for now. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.